In this video, I'm going to be covering the concept of the combat reload. So this is something that I think escapes the modern community because we've got a lot of stuff that's tainted by competition shooting, and the idea is speed over security in a lot of cases, because the idea is to shoot faster, and there's a lot of spillover that happened from the global war on terror, and it's really a failure because you're going against an enemy that is not a peer. You're basically bullying people that have no electronic capability similar to our own. So they don't have SIGINT capability, they don't have thermals and night vision and stuff like that unless they were able to take it off of us. So I think a lot of the skills, the basic skills that we should have had, were kind of watered down and bastardized because we were working in a CQB environment a lot of times where we could do things like dumping magazines and retrieving them later or what have you. Now, when you're dealing with an actual peer in an actual combat environment, you're not going to have the opportunity to go and pick up those magazines afterwards. You're probably going to have to be moving and off-site as soon as possible. So the combat reload done properly still needs to be implemented in training. So that's what I'm going to go over. So again, the idea of a combat reload is you're engaging an enemy actively. It is a two-way range, so you're shooting a few rounds, they're probably shooting a few rounds when they get the chance, right? So if you have them suppressed and you're part of a team, your other teammates can pick up the slack if you actually go down and you call stoppage or whatever. I like stoppage. It implies either you're out of ammunition and you have an empty magazine, or you have a malfunction. You don't necessarily know, but you'll fix it. But anyways, I like that. It's kind of British, but it is what it is. So with that said, I want to go over a few things that are actually going to be pretty important during the combat reload. So first off is you want to retain your magazines. All right, again, you're probably not going to get the chance. You're probably going to have to be moving. Now, if you're the caveat to this would be if you're in a CQB environment, like you're in your home or whatever, it doesn't really matter. The magazines are going to stay there. In a self-defense situation, it doesn't matter. Magazines are going to stay there, evidence and all that other jazz. But we're talking about a combat environment. You want to retain those magazines because, ammo's not cheap and magazines don't just appear out of the air when you get back. You're going to need to load those magazines. Again, they are not disposable, especially if you are not in the military or in a high unit. I know when I was in the Marine Corps, these were considered serialized items, and if you lost one, you had to replace it, which means it had to come out of your own paycheck. So you weren't getting, new ones, and I don't know of anybody who was, having them just loaded for them. But with that said, I like to have a dump pouch, and you'll notice that this dump pouch is not like the BFG or whatever, where it's just a floppy mess. You can see it's got a firm opening, so it's not going to collapse on itself easily. It's going to be open so you can actually find it and insert the magazines. I gutted this. It had an internal layer, like a internal nylon layer or whatever, that was very smooth and slick, but it robbed me of some capacity. I can fit at least 6 magazines in this very easily, and I've never had an issue with creating a yard sale while running. This floppy end underneath it actually folds over and acts like a kind of closure. So that's one important piece to remember. The second is, if you're on a two-way range with somebody, you're probably going to want to take cover when you're not able to shoot. That is a big problem that you're seeing with people practicing reloads. Even when you see Marines doing their little reloads, they're just standing static and they're reloading right there. That's bad. All right? You don't want to practice that, because practicing the way that you want to fight is kind of the key of training, right? You want to practice the way you want to fight. And you want to fight to maintain your security and awareness. So there's a few things to go over there, right? So first off, when you actually get the symptom of an empty rifle, that could be you feel it or you get a dead trigger. So it could be feeling in the shoulder, and it could be the feeling of a dead trigger. Now, if it's dark out, you could not really know what exactly is going on. So regardless, you got a dead trigger, your gun's not working anymore. You need to have a way of handling that situation, and you need to have a first step. First step is to get to cover and call out that you have a stoppage so people know. Now, when you have a team firing and everything, and then they're focused on their own stuff, Will they necessarily hear you? Maybe, maybe not. And that means that it's on you to visually still be in the fight after you do your analysis or what have you. So, firing, 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 oop, dead trigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to improve my position and get to cover. So this table right here is set up to act as a sort of, make-believe cover. So shooting, 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 out in necessarily open, maybe maneuvering, and then stoppage. So I'll look through the ejection port and see what's going on. If it's nighttime, you're not going to be able to just look. You won't see anything unless you have like a glow-in-the-dark follower that's going to tell you, hey, I'm out of ammo. So one method that I use to detect it is I'll just run the charging handle. If I don't get anything, then I know that the rifle is empty. It didn't slingshot forward and it didn't thunk forward like it was in a double feed or it had a stuck case. So again, first thing I do is firing, 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 firing stops, stoppage, and look at the ejection port. Or if it's night, okay, nothing happened. I didn't get a thunk forward like it went into a round, so that means that this thing is empty. So from there, okay, I know I need to do a reload. I need to get a fresh mag. So the first thing I'm going to do is, while I'm doing this, I'm going to hold it in a way to retain the rifle and keep it secure. But also, my head is going to be moving while I'm doing these movements. So the first thing I'm going to do is retain my empty magazine. And for the purposes of this video, I'm turning around. So first thing I'm going to do is take it, find my dump pouch, which is very easy to find. And then immediately, I go up to my fresh one. And my head is looking side to side. And what I'm doing here is I would be checking my area to see if there's anybody maneuvering or to see what my team is doing. There might have been a casualty, they might be trying to communicate. And then when I insert my magazine, I am doing a little push-pull, inserting it firmly, and then I'm going up with my thumb and then hitting the bullet release. I'm not charging it manually, and I'm not using the bad lever. I've seen it too many times where these things will get pushed up and then the bad lever gets activated before the magazine's actually seated. Just take that extra moment, boom, and it's done. It's not going to take all that much time. Once it is firmly seated and you have put it in the battery, you can go around cover, find a target, bang, bang, and then you'll back in. Now, a couple things to note here is, number one, when you're communicating with people, you need chin pointed at them. You can't be like, stoppage, and yelling, facing forward. When you have people out to the side, especially when they're shooting, you need to face them and orient the noise towards them. And it needs to be stoppage, not stoppage. They're not going to hear that. Like, you need to actually enunciate it for a period of time, all right? So the second thing is, when you have your reloads, when they're in their pouch, when you go from your dump pouch to your fresh magazines, you're going to need to defeat it. And it may have Velcro like this one, or it may have a bungee cord, or both. I've seen both. So you'll need to defeat it, but you'll want to have your magazines arranged in a way that is very intuitive to grab. So like these, I have the follower pointing down and the round would be pointing, back. So when I grab it and I have my rifle in position just like this, I point my magazine well as best I can at the magazine well. So I just go from the magazine pouch right to the mag well, and boom, done. It's pretty easy, pretty intuitive. You don't need to look at the gun. You don't need to, look around. And that's the third thing. do not stare at your gun. There's no reason to stare at your gun, especially if you're trying to get a process down that is relatively universal in nature. You shouldn't have to look for your dump pouch in order to find it. You can do it by feel. And then when you're going and putting a magazine into your rifle, it should be indexed pretty easily so you can get to it and then you can insert it. Now, the way that I'm finding my mag well is I'm using the front end of my magazine to find it. And this can be a sweep, so you can go from, you know, the right side to the left side. You can go bottom to top and try to get the top of your, you know, mag well or the front of your mag well, or just orient the side wherever it snags and then rotate it in. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that, but, you know, doing things quickly, it takes practice. You don't need to look at the gun in order to find that, especially if you index the rifle into your workspace. It's not really going to be all that big of a deal. So let's go over that process, and we can go ahead and at least give one magazine to my pouch so I can perform this again. So again, so I'm behind cover, bang, 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 firing, stops, stoppage, look, all right, looking around, bang, bang, back in. Notice I was looking around, I wasn't looking at my magazine well or anything like that. That's a nice slow way of showing how to do a combat reload with a rifle. So anyways, if you like these videos, go ahead and subscribe and let me know what you think down in the comments below. And you guys have a good one.